Hello everyone. We are live. Yoo-hoo! My name is Pavel, and on the behalf of the GDG Minsk group team, I'm very excited to be here with all of you on this online meetup. Today's topic of the online meetup is Flutter development and everything that is related to best practices, to the real-time project experience, and much more. But before we start with and move further and invite our speakers on the stage, I want to share some insights about our community and about GDG Minsk in general. GDG Minsk is located in Minsk, yeah, and it's a community where people share their knowledge, share their ideas, find the main goal of this community is collaboration and communication. And mainly, we focused on three different streams. It's mobile, front end, and cloud. So it's mainly we try to organize meetups that are focused on those different fields. And today you can find GDG Minsk in almost every resource like Facebook, Telegram, Twitter, or even on a YouTube channel. Today we have an online meetup, as I said, but if you have any problems, just please let us know in the YouTube chat and share your questions in the YouTube chat, because later in our session we are going to have a Q&A session where we will ask our speakers with your questions, and of course you can write anything you want in the YouTube chat, and maybe you will find someone who can help you as well there. And after the meetup, we kindly ask you to fill our form, to fill our feedback form, because it's very important for us to improve our process, to understand what you like, what you didn't like, what we can improve. So we will be very grateful if you can leave your feedback there. Okay, that's enough for today about our community. And I want to continue with our Flutter meetup. But today we're not going to have kind of a standard online meetup where we have presentations, where we have speakers. Today we're going kind of an interview where we will ask questions to our speakers, and we'll check their experience in different fields of the Flutter development. And today my companion will be Eugene Sadurov, who is very famous and well known in Flutter world. He does lots of different activities. He is leading Flutter Dev podcast. He's leading a GDG group as well, and he's a DevRel in his company called Surf. So he has a huge experience in Flutter. Let's invite Eugene to our stage. Hello, Eugene. How are you?
Hi, hello everyone. I'm fine. Thank you for having me on a meetup today. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Thank you, Eugene, that you decided to join us as well here today. So, okay, now we are ready to invite our speakers and discuss our topics and discuss our questions, right, Eugene?
Yeah, I need to say that both of our today's speakers and experts have vast experience in Flutter development, and not only in Flutter development, but they know a lot of different languages, frameworks, even platforms, and so on. And both have dived very deeply into Flutter in recent years, and they both have some stories for us to tell us today. So I'm ready to invite our great speakers and experts. And here they are. Majid.
Hello.
Majid is a Google developer expert. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. First of all, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
We hear you
Very
great.
good. Hello, everyone. My name is Majid, as you said, Google developer expert for Flutter and Dart, and dog lover, maybe. And I'm very happy to be here today and share my experience about mobile development, especially Flutter development. Let's see how it goes.
Sounds great. But what about another special guest? It is Vladimir Ivanov. Hello, Vladimir.
Hello,
Welcome to our meetup.
Thank you very much. Do you hear me well?
Yeah, sure. So the same question for you. Can you tell a little bit more about yourself and your professional interests?
Okay, so my title nowadays is a solution architect. That means that I'm solving business problems with technology, and frequently it happens that those problems lie in the area of mobile development. So Flutter is a recent technology of choice for some of the solutions I participated in. So yeah, I'm excited about it and to talk with you guys today.
Yeah, great, thank you. But before we start our meetup, we will have a little Flutter development check. And I have the first question for all of you. How many different platforms and operation systems have you tried running your Flutter application on?
It's a good question. Go ahead, Vladimir. First, you.
Yeah, so the last time I checked, we were running successfully on Android and iOS, but we started the proof of concept for the web. So it will be running on desktop operating systems as well.
What about desktop platform?
Not yet, really.
So, Majid?
Yes, well, Android and iOS for sure, and web. We had in my previous company that I was working, we had also web in production. So at that time, web was beta still, but we experimented and we had it in production. For desktop, apart from my personal experience, as you know, I'm GD and I have to experiment and share different things. Apart from that, we have not built anything, at least for production yet. But Flutter 2 is around the corner. But it's already there, to be honest. And it's time to take some action and create some desktop application as well.
Okay. You both have successfully passed the Flutter developer verification. So we can start now and move forward. And first, I think that it would be great to start with your background and the history of your entering into Flutter technology and Flutter industry at all. So please tell us in a few words, how did you get started with the Flutter? Maybe you tried some samples or you were at some conference and you hear about Flutter from the stage. What is your history?
Majid,
yeah.
do you want to start?
Yeah, I can take it first maybe this time. That's my turn. Not just kidding. Well, I think back in 2000, I don't remember exactly, was it 2017, late 17 or somewhere. So I was trying to figure out finding a good solution. We were experimenting with different platforms to see how we can create our cross-platform application. So we had at that time where I was working, we had JavaScript mobile based application. And we wanted to migrate from that to something else. So I was trying, and the task of me was to experiment with different platforms and see which one is better and pros and cons and things like that, like evaluating these frameworks. So for sure, at that time, there was a couple of things that I had to experiment, like and they still exist right now. Flutter was quite new and in beta, I think, and when I was experimenting with, I had already some experience with Cordova and with a native script and a little bit with the React Native. So I knew how they work. So I wanted to actually experiment more in depth to realize the pinpoints of each. However, figure out that there is a new one around the corner, and that's Flutter, and everyone is talking about it. And I just gave it a try, and I think in the first 30 minutes, I said, I think I found it. I don't need to go and do anything else, any other research for finding which platform I need to choose or framework. And then I think within an hour, I just wrote a report and to my team, and we had a conversation afterward and said, I think I found it. This is what we want. And that was my first experience with Flutter, where I think was end of the year 2017, perhaps, where it was beta and was ready for releasing to production.
Yeah, thank you. And I know Vladimir as a person with a really great experience in the various cross-platform solutions. And I want to know in a various cross-platform solutions, not just in a React Native, but I think you have experience in every cross-platform solution, maybe that exists, that still exists nowadays. What can you tell about your history entering into Flutter?
Okay. So I'm not really like an expert in all of the cross-platform solutions, but I need to have a high-level understanding of each of them, because that was part of the job to, advise to clients what technology to pick. So regarding my history with Flutter last year, at the beginning of the last year, we were starting a new project for a new client for electronic learning domain. So basically the electronic means to study yourself. And we were picking up a solution for a mobile application to help people from Russia, from Italy, from Germany, and other non-natively English-speaking countries to learn English language. And I was tasked with the choice what to choose to build this new mobile application. And we weren't considering native approaches. We wanted something cross-platform to do both Android and iOS right from the get-go. So basically, the only choice from the modern frameworks were Flutter and React Native. And I spent, I believe, a month comparing those two frameworks. So I had to get myself acquainted with Flutter, because I had experience with React Native previously. So I'm considering myself pretty much deeply understanding the React Native framework. But I haven't heard about Flutter relatively deep, so I had to study myself, doing some proof of concept, laying out all the pros and cons of both technologies. I wrote an article about that back then. I can provide the link later, but in the end, we decided together that given both pros and cons, we see that Flutter is a technology of choice. So we see it really perspective. It was really performant. It was really easy to learn from the language perspective. The approach was pretty much the same. So yeah, that was a no-brainer. And we saw some cons. For example, lack of developers on the market, as that was relatively new technology. Lack of some libraries, but we decided that we can overcome that through learning, through writing some tools by ourselves. And we successfully implemented the solution with Flutter. So this is my story.
And can you tell us about your current project? Or maybe if you can't, because of NDA, you can tell us about the most interesting part of your current work on your current position.
Unfortunately, I don't have a current project with Flutter, but the previous one, well, I left it, but I know that it's still not in production, but it's in beta testing right now, but not due to any development issues. So the scope was successfully implemented. So that is a huge success. There are some legal and marketing things just to do. So I keep the heartbeat close, so to know when it go live. So when I can say, hey, I worked on this thing, so this is awesome. Please try it. So yeah, that was a learning application, and it was very media rich. So it had to include, videos, audio, subtitles, interacting with the application in voice manner, text manner, and so on. So and Flutter handled that really well.
Mm-hmm. And what about you, Majid? Maybe you can tell us about your current project.
Yeah, sure. Well, whether I don't know it's a good thing or bad thing, I'm involved in several projects related to Flutter.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing.
Some at work and some in the community. So for the work one, I'm not able to share much, unfortunately. But for the community one that we are working on, the couple of things that I can mention, and you can also come and contribute if you want. And one of the most important thing is Plus plugins, which we have extended a few plugins from Flutter, original Flutter repo plugins. And then we are extending these plugins into, we have already done that, by the way. So to support all the platforms, to take them into the next level, to add null safety and be responsive, answer issues, resolve problems, and be very active on that. And a couple of those plugins I can call is like connectivity plugin, or device info, or package info, or sensors, or packages like that. So if you want to learn more, plus dot community fluttercommunity.dev, plus.fluttercommunity.dev is where you can see. And I think we were in Flutter 2 article from Chris Sells, we were also kind of highlighted in the article that we are doing this and we are moving forward.
Yeah, I saw it. And to be honest, I had a plan to ask you about these Flutter Plus community plugins in the end of our today's session, but you tell us about it now. So I need to ask you one thing. Vladimir?
Yeah, before we continue, I remember that aside from production work, I also have a component called Flutter Figma Preview. This is a plugin to Flutter as well that allows you to shorten the feedback loop between the implementation of the visual design and design verification. It is now kind of on hold, but I believe it will be requiring to have the nullability support, for example. So we'll be updating that. And actually, this project gave me an idea to do the same with Jetpack Compose. So I'm working right now on the Compose feedback preview at the moment. So it should be going live like in a couple of months.
Exciting.
Since we already touched this topic, please, Majid, tell us in more detail what problem does Flutter Plus plugin community solve?
Yes, that's a very good question. I think back in a year ago, we were seeing that some of the open issues regarding some of these plugins, for instance, battery or connectivity, they are open for a while, and the team, due to some workload maybe, or I don't know, some priorities, they don't respond very well and they don't support that. And I saw, when we saw that also, that a lot of other platforms are already coming to Flutter, and these plugins they don't have this support for all of these platforms. So, well, we had some communications with the team, and at the end we decided to extend this, and we called them Plus. The reason was because we forked actually the main packages, and we started to, first of all, the first important things that we resolved was having all the platforms supported for these plugins. Some of the native ones still don't have that support. And then right after that, I think it was December or maybe November last year, we started adding null safety and support. And now in January, we achieved this as well. Like before Flutter 2 announcement, all of our plugins were null safe and completely supported in all different platforms, from Android, iOS, web, Mac, Linux, and Windows. And on top of that, we also thought that now we are doing this, it's also good that maybe adding some new documentation, updating some examples and better examples, even UIs, more recipes and things like that as well. So, and these are the things now is already under the progress in the team. So I'm not alone in Plus teams. We have a couple of other peoples with me, and a lot of good contributors, seasonal contributors. Thanks to all of them. So now I think these plugins, I would say, they are much better than the main one, the original one right now. And I believe, and I think in one of the articles also we mentioned we aim to replace the original one and become the main one, the only one for instance, for battery. So, and I think we will get there. We are showing some strengths to Flutter team, and I hope that we will get there eventually.
You do a really cool job. I want to thank you for this community. But I want to ask you, this is the real community, but how many people involved into this process and supports all these plugins?
Yes, very good question. I need to open this chat so I don't need to miss someone. So the core, we have, I should actually split into different categories. We have contributors, which they come and contribute, and we have some core contributors, which they constantly, like they own this library and they maintain it right now. So the number of contributors, it's a lot. So you can go to the Plus repository on Flutter community and check them. So I'm sorry if I cannot read all of the names, but the main contributors for the Plus plugins are famous people. Probably you know them from the community. Simon Lightfoot, JP, probably you've seen his name on Twitter with JP Normie. Miguel Beltran and Mace, probably you know her. So these are the main contributor. Apart from that, we also have some other contributors like Jonathan Booker. We have Bruno Garcia, and a couple of other folks with us, which they also help to contribute our packages. And they also supported or sent some PR to support these packages for different platforms.
And how do you rate the work of the Flutter team in general? Are they active enough in supporting their community, or they are not fast enough to respond to the problems? You told us that was the reason of the Flutter Plus community starting point.
You're asking me. I think Vladimir also should answer this. Maybe he also
both of
has
you guys. This question to both of you.
Yeah,
yes.
I think Flutter team is on point, replying to those issues. However, there are a couple of outstanding issues with Flutter framework. I haven't checked for them, but a couple of months ago we faced into an issue when the application was simply crashing. It was some weird issue with scroll view and web view being nested. So, and if you put like a lot of content into web view, it will instantly crash your Android application. So not sure if it was addressed, but at that moment, we waited for like a month and there wasn't a reply for that. So I think like generally everything is on point, but there are some areas that would appreciate the improvement.
My experience is that Flutter team is very responsive, to be honest, and they're working very hard. And I see because I'm following, some issues and constantly, and I'm following some of these topics, and I see they are actively working. But the thing is that there are, if we are talking about issues, we're talking about a couple of things. First of all, for instance, some issues are critical and very obvious, and it's an error or some issue that everyone is facing, and they are immediately asked. And you see sometimes they are releasing patch and hot patches very quickly, and that's good. And some of the issues are not very, first of all, not very critical. It's critical, but not that hard, that much, and also it's not very easy to resolve by one or two samples. And I think one of the example is the animation issue, the startup animation issue for iOS, which is open. And well, it might sound easy to fix, but it's in the latest in Flutter, I think 2 Q&A session. One of the speakers said that actually it's we need more and more open issues about this to reproduce all the use cases and try to fix that. It's not as easy as we think. It's just one thing that causes this problem. It could be several different problems that causes this problem. So we need to find the root cause and fix it. And that's why it's a bit hard to solve it. But I know that they are on this issue and they are trying to get it fixed. One thing regarding the issues I should point out is that some people say when they are evaluating Flutter, they go to GitHub issue and say, "Oh, Flutter has over 7,000 issue open." So the 7,000 issue is it's. If we can think of it in two aspects. Once people say, some people say that this is like a weakness, but then on the other hand, it's not a weakness. It shows a strength. And imagine also, keep in mind, this 7,000 is not just for Flutter. Everything, all the issues regarding Flutter, plugins and everything, it just goes under one repository. And that's why the number is quite big. And they don't try to close easily the issues. And that's why they are open and the number goes higher and higher.
I would say that this is a sign of the popularity and the adoption of the
Absolutely.
platform when people start contributing by just providing issues, and that's fine.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you mentioned this epic issue about frames stuttering during running your application on iOS devices, and so I saw the post on a Reddit that was made by Eric Seidel, one of the owners and founders of Flutter framework in general, and he mentioned here that they found out that it is extremely hard to fix in a long term. And this is caused by some architectural errors that they made during implementation of this framework in general. But it is with high possibility it can be solved, maybe in a close future. No estimates, but maybe one day we'll get this issue fixed. But yeah, sometimes it's not so easy to fix all the problems, even if they're rather critical.
Yeah. He also mentioned in this post that actually part of the problem is that they made some assumptions about the animations, and when do you compile those animations? Do you do that on the startup time, at the compile time, at the runtime, and so on? So right now they are reconsidering those assumptions, having all those reports. So and everybody should understand that this is a normal process, that you're never gonna create something that is perfect from every point of view. So you need to adjust it for the real life, and that you always have to make some trade-offs. So there's like no perfect solution. And if they will move this animation compilation from the runtime to compile time, you will solve the issue in the right time, but the compile time will increase. So somebody will not be happy about this and will ask to fix this. So
yes.
yeah, it's trade-offs.
I think the main point we need to tell everybody that even critical mistakes is not a sign that the whole framework, the whole solution is a mistake. It's just a local mistake that would be fixed sooner or later, nothing else.
Yes.
So let's move on. I can help but ask you a top number one question for all Flutter developers. Was it challenging for you to sell Flutter as a technology to your CTO or whatever person makes a decision about formulating technology stack in your company? And what can you advise to those people who want to do this now in their companies?
Yes, Vladimir, I go first. Sorry. I actually had that problem, not to CTO. It depends on your company size. So my company size is a bit big. We have like over 25 or 30,000 employees in several different companies. And if you decide something to choose, it's going to be hard to sell it to all teams and managers and these layers of manager to decide what we have decided and they confirm. But let me just put it this way. So the approach that I took to sell, not sell actually, to show the strength of Flutter to my colleagues and managers was this. First of all, I think the hardest time that I had was not convincing managers or CTO. That was the easy part. For me was iOS developers. iOS developers were so conservative and they didn't want to try it out. And they always said, no, just native, nothing else works. And I understand. But what I did was we had two different teams, Android and iOS for, of course, our application. And I started it. This process took me 3 months, by the way. But I started to show, to set up some meetings. And in the meetings, I started to live code and to show how you can build something which is already existed in our application with Flutter within a short time. I just, in a real time, I demonstrate that this is how Flutter works and this is how it actually helps to work more productive. For instance, I remember one of our Android developers said, oh, this hot reload in 1 second, it just takes me 1 minute in Android to recompile. So these are the things that I try to understand what these developers are doing. So luckily I had some experience. So I took those pain points and I just demonstrated with Flutter and showed them how cool or easy or productive and efficient they can use with Flutter. So I think the main point is, so showing by doing is the best selling pitch, perhaps, not just presenting how it works.
This is a cool story, actually. I haven't thought about, doing real time some features. So thank you for the idea. That sounds great.
If you want one more idea, actually, one thing that I also did was a hackathon, a day of hackathon, like a half a day. And I invited the iOS and Android developers, although only one iOS dev came and the rest were Android developer. But they came and we started to hack something together with Flutter. And this hackathon actually worked.
Cool. I need to try the same approach at my current workplace. So,
do you have something to add, Vladimir?
About selling the idea, so it was not about the selling. So we did, a proper comparison between the platforms. So I wasn't selling anything. I was just providing the pros and cons, saying, so hey, here we have those risks, and here we have those mitigation strategies. And for the Flutter, it would be just writing the stuff by yourself. If something is missing, say subtitle support, and by the way, some VTT support was missing at that time, so we had to do some workaround about that. There was no problem to sell it to developers because we were, staffing the team from scratch. So we just told them, hey, we're doing Flutter. Are you interested in learning it like on the go in the production application? And some people were like, yeah, let's do that. so that was fine. So yeah, it wasn't that hard, and I'm ready to do the same exercise again.
And we have a question from our audience. Vladimir, where do you get this fake dash that is placed?
Yeah, it's not a fake dash. It's an Angry Bird, So
it looks like a fake dash, really.
Yeah. It is like 10 years old. So we got one from the promotion campaign from that. But I actually have a very original Bitrise cat. So it's a space cat because everything is deployable. So even a cat. So yeah.
Okay. So Flutter Engage. Let's talk a little bit about this event. It was on the 3rd of March this year, and it brings us a lot of announcements about Flutter and about new supporting platforms, new language features, and so on. What is your most favorite announcement that you heard during Flutter Engage?
You go first.
Who will be first? Yeah, okay. Go Majid.
No, go Majid, please. Yeah.
Okay, Vladimir needs time to think about.
Yeah,
I can tell you because I know. For me, everything was so exciting. And that was not very surprising. But then one thing that I was really liked, I think, among all the other things were introduced or announced, the usage of Flutter in cars or Toyota example, perhaps was one of my favorite. So, or let's say the usage of Flutter and Dart in IoT solutions. And that's pretty exciting because I personally like IoT, and I also worked for IoT company for a long time. And so when I see that these type of solutions with Flutter goes to the cars and maybe refrigerator later, or a mirror or a smart mirror later, you build something with Flutter with that, and things like that, it just makes me so excited. I think that's my favorite.
Okay. My favorite.
Sorry, 1 minute. I have a question about this. Can you tell why Toyota did this? What was the main reason why they choose Flutter for their single platform device? Because car is not a multi-platform device. You need just to run your application on the one embedded device and nothing else. Why?
Mm. Well, if I knew exactly, I would have been the managers, one of the managers in Toyota. So I don't know the exact reason,
but what do you think?
Guess. I can guess. So I think that one of the reasons, what Flutter solves, to me, Flutter is solving drawing or painting or rendering pixels in any device that has or accept pixels, right? And a car device or this display in the car is one of them. And Flutter does this very well. So if you want to say what Flutter does, it's just trying to, build or render these pixels very correctly to this screen. And that is what it exactly does. And I believe this is just the start for Toyota. So the user interface, or what they are going to build in the cars, the display, it's only one thing or one aspect of development. Perhaps later they want to reuse some of this functionality to build, I don't know, some sort of controls over web, or give some SDKs or some APIs or things like that as well, which makes sense to have one single code base, which is doing all of that, like a desktop, or who knows, maybe they have some internal use cases, some kind of desktop application which they can control or build something for these devices as well. And I think it just makes sense for this type of solution. And perhaps Vladimir can add more as a solution architecture.
Yeah, sorry for interruption, Vladimir. You can continue now.
No worries. So for me, the most exciting thing from Flutter Engage is that Google didn't manage to host properly the images on their blog posts. You can check out right now, so there are no images there. So this is surprising. But jokes aside, the most exciting thing for me was the announcement of the canonical. If you don't know, this is the company that is doing Ubuntu. And they said that Flutter is their choice by default for their desktop applications. And this is a very rare case in IT industry, because usually like some desktop approaches comes to mobile, like hybrid apps or .NET Go in Xamarin, and like they call it .NET 5 right now, and so on. And at this moment, we have, the technology that comes from mobile, from Android and iOS, from cross-platform thing, it is going to desktop. And this is really a new thing. And I think the canonical is just the first. And you saw that Microsoft did like well, not the same thing, but they announced that, yeah, we're supporting Flutter as well, and so on. So this is the most, surprising thing, at least for me.
Okay, thank you, guys. Let's talk a little bit about the development process. And for 2 years, Flutter was mainly a mobile cross-platform framework. So I need to ask you a question about your experience in writing native apps for Android or iOS. Do you have such an experience before you enter into Flutter? And if yes, what do you like the most and what do you hate the most about native mobile development, not just cross-platform solutions?
Okay, so I actually have almost 8 years of doing Android native. So I started like 2011 maybe with, Android 1.6. So that was funny times.
You're a real dinosaur.
Yeah, I'm old. What would I say is that I always hated this long build time and the long feedback loop. So everything you changed, even a little thing in XML, you had to, to wait for minutes. And I remember the day when, IntelliJ IDEA received the support for, this instant preview. And it was hope, like, for everybody in Android world that the problem would be solved. But unfortunately, it wasn't, because, it was buggy. It wasn't showing the same result if you compare it to the device. It was not, refreshing automatically every time. And I was like, you were supposed to fix the problem, not make it worse. So, yeah, I always hated it. But actually, surprisingly enough, I enjoyed, the XML thing for UI. Because when you started mastering it and you have, a taste for your tool, for all those relative layouts, linear layouts, styles, and so on, it became really simple. So when you got the idea, you could do the interfaces relatively easy. So yeah, that was a fun part.
But what do you prefer, declarative UI or not declarative UI?
I would say I would never go back to imperative UI, like never, because declarative is so much better. So, for example, from the cognitive perspective, it's much easier to understand what happens to UI. it is much faster in the development. So just the pace of the development is higher. So declarative UI for all the things, and I really like that the whole mobile industry going that way. So we have React, we have Swift UI, we have Flutter, we have Jetpack Compose. Like it's all the same, but with different languages, different technologies. So yeah, that's great.
By the way, I remember this awful tool for instant preview for native Android. It was called Instant Run, and it was so bad that after 2 or 3 years of trying to making it work, just simply do the main thing, the main purpose of this software, they decide to rewrite it from the scratch. And they announced it during the Google I/O. I don't remember the year when they announced it, but I remember the fact. It was funny enough. Yeah. So Majid, what about you? Do you have a native mobile experience?
I do not have actually much native experience. Just a few side project which I did with Swift and Android. Unfortunately, I don't have deep knowledge about that as you guys has. But I do have a lot of experience with other frameworks, especially like the cross-platform frameworks. Some of very well-known one like Cordova or NativeScript or React Native. I think back in a few years ago, some of these problems that you're mentioning, like compile them and these things, also apply to these frameworks, and that was a pain. And one of the things that I really like about Flutter, as Vladimir mentioned, is the pace of development. It's the time that you convert your idea from a design to something on a device, and you can test it. And I think it was not possible before Flutter. And I don't think I'm telling something like lie. It was not possible to sit with your designer next to the developer and adjust the design together. And that's only possible with Flutter. I don't remember any time in my career that I asked for mobile development. I asked my designer or company's designer, just sit next to me and try to fix it together or adjust it. These designer wants to see everything pixel perfect. So, and that's only possible with Flutter, because otherwise with Hot Rod you can do that. Otherwise it's not possible. And that's one thing I really like.
I need to object. Well, actually, React Native provided this capability as well, especially with a tool called Expo. So they had this opportunity to have the device, the program in development being run on the device and being hot reloaded as well or over network. So it was even possible remotely. So when you're in different rooms in different cities and so on. But I agree that Flutter brings this to the whole new level, because this hot reload, it is much more stable than it was in React Native. And React Native had a history of problems with this hot reload. Then they had live reload. Then they had to re-implement it again, and then it became somehow reliable tool. So hot reload and Flutter works much better from the beginning. So yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I also want to agree with Majid that Flutter tooling is absolutely great, especially comparing it to some native mobile development tools. I can describe it like you feel a lot of love and patience and care from the Flutter team while you developing Flutter applications, because everything just works as intended. And I have a very small experience with native iOS development, and sometimes I need to touch these development tools during Flutter development, because we need sometimes to set up our iOS build using Xcode. And every time I feel that Apple just hate all developers that are using their infrastructure for some reason. I don't know why. It's really a big question for me. But Xcode and everything what surrounds Xcode, it's an awful piece of software. I don't know why.
I feel the same. So I used to say that Apple loves their customers and hates developers.
But let's talk about language. I think that language is just the same kind of tool. But what do you think about Dart? Do you really like it, or it's more like a trade-off for you?
That's a very good question. Well, I like Dart. Well, I think there are some missing parts in Dart for sure, but the language together with Flutter is evolving. And I think one of the strengths of Flutter and Dart team together as a team is that both language and framework together, they are growing and they are solving or adding features to solve our problems. And I think I like Dart. And from the beginning, I remember when I started maybe 3 years ago or sometime even more, it just makes sense to me, especially. But of course, there are some stuff that is lacking. But I can also say that within the last 3 years, the language itself has evolved quite a lot, like significantly. And one of the things that they added recently, like sound null safe. So it's pretty awesome feature if you are thinking like how they are thinking to solve this problem for us and how it's affecting our development. Although there's also a mixed feeling here. Some people say, oh, okay, the feature itself is good, but some of the implementation, maybe in the framework, does not make sense. We want maybe error instead of null returning, or things like that. So, but in general, choosing language, well, for Flutter, you don't have any choice. You have to use Dart. There's no other way. But together, these two makes a very good combination, I believe. And it just makes sense to use Dart for that. But, you know, for different problems, different languages might be better. So I'm not one of those big fans that say, okay, let's use Dart for everything. So I don't think that's correct. I think we should find what problem we are trying to solve and find the right language or solution for that problem, and then go ahead moving forward. What do you think, Vladimir?
I would say that Dart is okay. So I believe I love Kotlin, really. So I really enjoy it. But with Dart, it's I would say like love-hate relationship. So it's great with some points, so you can easily write a lot of code. The tooling is okay, so everything is highlighted. The errors are fine. You understand very fast what's really wrong and so on. However, there are some aspects that are not great, especially when you come to code generation. And unfortunately, code generation is mandatory for some things. For example, when you do a lot of serialization, deserialization, you either do it manually or you use one code generator or another code generator, and they have their own problems. So it's not like the language itself, may be inconvenient. It's tooling around the language. It may be inconvenient because of the language design. So it's kind of complicated for me. So I'm feeling fine writing the Dart code, but I believe it could be better.
Okay, so if Dart is not a pain by itself, let's talk about pains in general, because nothing is perfect, and Flutter also confirms this statement. What do you think about the worst part of Flutter for you? Maybe you had some bad experience during Flutter development and you want Flutter team to improve some certain parts of the framework or tooling.
Majid, what would you say?
Very good question. Well, I had some situation that I opened an issue, I requested to fix something, but I never had this problem like, oh, this is a very big problem or it's a pain, you know? So I never had this situation, to be honest, myself. But I see some people have, perhaps. I believe that the way that Flutter is going, it's pretty bright, and the way that probably many developer likes, like as you said, everything just works, and that's what we want as a developer. So you just run a command and it just works, and that's exactly how Flutter is giving us. And I think they're also improving more and more stuff. Like we recently seen in Flutter Engage that they introduced Dart Fix and Flutter Fix to fix some of the depreciated stuff for you automatically, or taking care of the migrating your project to the null safety. I mean, they are maybe trying to create some problem for you, like null safety. Perhaps is a problem for many projects. Still, it's a problem. It's hard to migrate. It's not that easy. But then they also trying to give you some, at the same time, some tools that help to take that point and make it happen. You know, so in short, I cannot think of anything like harsh. That was a very big problem, but they should have fixed it. Maybe one thing that I can just point out, and I think by just a joke, I told also to some Flutter team members that they should stop for introducing more screens to Flutter. So because it's hard to to catch up right now, it's a lot of platforms to build with Flutter. So maybe they should slow down a bit and focus on making these platforms more stable. So that's probably one thing that I want from them.
Yeah, and I want to tell you about my pain point. It's kind of unusual, and the problem is not very big at all, but it was unpleasant surprise for me. I have been looking for a good implementation of the bottom sheet widget because you have bottom sheet out of the box, and you have even some variants of it, like draggable, scrollable bottom sheet, but it not acts like a real bottom sheet in native Android. You can't even enter this bottom sheet to some certain points of the screen to make snap between them, and it was quite hard to implement it by yourself, especially when you have no time for that during your development cycle. And for 2 years, for 2 years, I searched for this implementation, and finally, I found a package called Snap-in Sheet, and it is really good. It is not very popular. It has just 130 likes on PubDev, but it works like a charm. Just like a native bottom sheets in Android, but it is question for me why it is not a part of SDK, because we really need that widget so often, because our designers like to use bottom sheets over here and there around the application. Yeah, that is my story. Okay, let's move forward. But before that, I want to give an imaginary microphone to our watcher because there is an interesting question for all newbies, for all developers who want to enter to Flutter. What is the best entry point to start with Flutter. Maybe you can advise some tutorials or online courses or books or some chats to join to discuss Flutter and to ask questions to such experts like you and other guys.
Yes, very good question. I think, in February, there was a campaign from Flutter team and Flutter community together, which we ran it, and was 30 days of Flutter. And we prepared a lot of content for that. So I'm trying to find the link right now. So it gives you 4 weeks of content from the very, very beginning to the end or becoming an expert. So I think if you follow these contents for each week and trying to catch up with that, so it's a very good starting point. That's one thing that I can suggest, or at least we prepared in February. And many people attended this campaign. Another thing that I can mention is I am also a content creator. I have courses for Flutter on Pluralsight, on YouTube, different places. But I think the best thing is of watching and checking all of these courses is amazing. And I recommend find one of the teachers that you like, the way that they teach or they speak, and just move forward. But I think the most important thing is to just give it a try. Do something. Just think of a problem that you are solving right now with maybe, I don't know, creating some simple dashboard, which you are doing with something, I don't know, with JavaScript maybe, and say that, okay, can I just turn it to a mobile application? Let's do it with Flutter and try to actually do this. And along this way of doing, you will find the things that you need to understand about Flutter. And then you can just go and search and learn about it. And then by doing these topics, you just will get master after a while. And that's, I think, the advice that I can give you the most. By the way, I will find the links and send it to the chat right now for the content.
Well, maybe you have something to add?
Yeah, I would say do not focus only on the books or tutorials. So they are good by themselves, but you always need to mix up some practice. Otherwise, the learning just doesn't happen. It's not like the learning for humans work. So always mix up the practice. Start from the beginning. Do it piece by piece. So start with the language when you can, write a console program with Dart and have some feeling for that. Then start Flutter, and again, do it step by step. Understand what widget is. How do you combine widgets? Then how do you lay them out? Do not swim up right into dependency injection and complex things like code generation. Just do it gradually. And for the content, you got Majid. So
yeah. And in addition, I want to tell you about quite good book that you can read if you like books. This book called Flutter in Action. And I want to say that for me, this book was good enough to get some basics. And what's even more pleasant news that this year it will be published in Russian. Maybe if it is more convenient for you to read in Russian. And I'm the technical editor of this book, so I know some insights about it that I shared with you today. Okay, thank you guys for all your advices. We can move to our last topic for today, and this topic is architecture, because everybody loves architecture and everybody loves to talk about architecture on different conferences and giving talks. But I want to know, are there any fundamental differences between architectures in Flutter and in any other software solutions, okay, maybe in any other mobile software solutions, because we won't talk about backend and so on. Or it is about the same problems and the same approaches.
Don't get the rotten tomatoes thrown at my face, but I would say that, well, Flutter is a declarative UI framework in the first place, right? So all the architecture problems that you would face in React or in Jetpack Compose or in whatever else declarative UI framework, you would face in Flutter as well. And the approaches to solve them are more or less similar, right? So if you check out, you can find out the same Redux pattern or Mobix pattern in both React and Flutter. Of course, there's block as well, but it's the same approach. And by the way, those are not architectures; those are solutions for managing state. And regarding the architecture, it's even more common between the mobile applications, at least, because you always have this representation layer, then you have view model or interactor layer, then you have a repository layer, then you have data sources, and so on, and everything else, and everything together is a clean architecture or onion architecture or whatever else, and so on, and then you can discover that the architecture of your mobile application, if you take it like abstractly enough, can be moved to a backend service implementation, because the whole clean thing translate there. They just don't have the proper UI layer. They have REST controllers, but who cares? From the architecture point of view, it's more or less the same. So I would say once you learn the architecture approaches and the idea how to make those decisions and how to balance the trade-offs, like every architecture becomes more or less the same.
Yeah, you touched very good points, actually, Vladimir. I want to also add on top of that a few things that I faced and I'm still facing. So architecture, it's architecting a software. It's a very complex topic by itself. It's not one thing that we are talking. And mainly I've seen that when we are talking about architecture in a Flutter app, mostly we're talking about state management, as Vladimir also pointed out. State management is only one small part of it. And it's very big problem for many because the application is small. So applying the whole concept of software architecture to this small application may not be suitable. Therefore, the most pain point will be state management. And then we're talking about that. And we're thinking that choosing an state management will be an architecture for our application. So when it comes to architecture software, it's a bigger problem. It comes from even a domain. You need to understand the whole business, and you need to understand like what backend is doing, what frontend, and things like that, and then try to like design your mobile application in this sense. I had actually a talk in Flutter Europe 2019, I think. I think I was presenting about domain-driven design for. At that time, we had some experiment with the domain-driven design, and we tried to grab some of the good idea on that and implement in our application. And I just presented in the conference. I think it's still on the YouTube. But afterwards, I realized a lot of people came to me and said, "Oh, what you are saying." I think I pointed out is that this is a very complex. One solution cannot be applied to all different apps. You need to realize your application. This is one way out of million other ways to think about your application, right? So just what I can say is do not overcomplicate it. So if you have a simple application, few pages, small team, try to just move on, create something that, as long as it's readable, the concerns, like Vladimir says, the separation of concerns, the UI concerns, the business logic, the concerns are separated, then you are good to go. Whatever also you choose for your state management should be your solution. And if you're comfortable with that, that's the best solution for you. Just go with it.
But from your point of view, does it make sense to write your own architectural solution just to control everything and to know how it works under the hood, or the most needs are covered by the existing solutions like Block, Redux, or maybe something else that is highly popular in community today?
From my point of view, if something is very popular, does not mean it's a solution for my problem. So you need to understand your problem. Sometimes, and also one thing is very important, and I realized it during my career, is that we do not need to follow the trend. So for a couple of years, Redux pattern was very popular, and these days it's not. So something else is coming, and that doesn't mean Redux is bad. Maybe still is a solution for some problems. I believe before you start choosing this architecture, you need to evaluate a few of them. You need to understand the patterns, and then you need to adjust based on your needs and apply it. You may even mix two of them and then apply it in your application and get the best out of it. That's your team.
I think that it's a great point, because popularity is a bad word when we talk about architectural solutions. Because if you choose the architecture just because of its popularity, and I saw really many people who act like this, that means that you don't think your own head and about your own problems and about your own goals of your project during this selection process.
Yeah, hype-driven development, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But let's talk about another architectural topic. What about modularization? Because separating your project into models, it's a kind of trend in native mobile application development, especially for Android, maybe for iOS too. But does Flutter allow you to split your application into some kind of models, or it a monolith-only framework?
Yeah, it actually does. We did it in our application. We made several separations. So first of all, we moved all the code that is talking to the backend to separate modules, because we had we had one entering point to the backend, but actually there were a bunch of microservices there, and everyone had its own client, and we had its own module inside the application talking to that particular service. So that was the first thing. Second thing, we moved all the domain object into a separate module, so everybody is depending on that object. And also we had a UI library moved to a separate library as well, so separate module. So that way we separated all the changes that happens with different concerns, right? And we provided a way to to split the work. And if we see that something that is that affects several modules, it always a question, hey, why it's so? And we have the opportunity to think about the boundaries and so on. So yeah, Flutter definitely supports that. It supports pretty well. So the only concern that we faced is that it is a bit difficult to run unit tests for all the modules and to have the overall coverage, but you can live with that.
Yes, I can support Vladimir. Yes, it's absolutely Flutter supports modularity. And I think my talk about domain-driven design, the main point, if I just say one word, it was the modularity. And So when I was talking about subdomains and splitting into smaller chunk and make them as a package, is exactly what I'm pointing out. Like make small packages, but this is very, very hard. Finding these small pieces where can be a package, it's very hard. You need to understand your application, your architecture, your domain. You need to even understand your business, what they want later, what they want now, what feature you need to add later, or things like that. So it's not an easy task for sure. It's a very hard task and very challenging. But the short answer for the modularity, I'm a big fan. I think everyone likes somehow a smaller piece rather a big chunk. So definitely it's a good thing, and Flutter support that.
And am I right that splitting your Flutter application into different modules and packages is not about improving the build time? Because this has been a big problem for native mobile development for a long time, and the modularization is one of the way to improve it. Is improving build time an actual challenge for Flutter developers, or it is everything okay with it from the scratch, from out of the box?
I don't think the modularity in Flutter helps for build time because I think in general the build time for Flutter is quite fast. Modularity does not remove or add any significant time anyway. I don't see it as improvement to that, but I see it as an improvement to maintenance your code base in the long run. I see it that way.
Yeah, I agree. I believe the longest part of the compilation is, native things. So iOS especially. So this is a particular pain for me. Building Android, all this stuff, and the Dart compilation doesn't contribute much to the compilation time.
Okay, guys, we had a really great time together, and I have the very last question for you. And this question is about future. What can be improved in Flutter, and what Flutter will become in 2 or 3 years? Maybe you have your own thoughts about it. Will it be one of the major mobile solutions, or maybe not only just mobile, but also web and desktop? Or it will be just some hipster technology, not for everybody, just for solving some certain issues and business goals?
Well, I can start. So with the trend that we are seeing, and we've seen in Flutter Engage as well, like Canonical that Vladimir pointed out, and all of these new things that are, or new companies or old companies and big names that are going to invest on Flutter. So I see the future of Flutter is very bright, and it's going to be way mature on these platforms that these big companies are investing on. Because investment on, like Canonical investing on Flutter, means they're going to hugely improve the user experience or developer experience, even for building applications with Flutter for Linux, let's say. So in that part, that's a very bright feature. But what I really hope that Flutter team can work, and I'm pretty sure they're working on that right now very hard, is I think Flutter right now has a fairly position for desktop platform application creation, and also mobile, like iOS, Android is pretty okay, very well established. But web, to be honest, it's not there yet. I have built with Flutter Web. I have a dashboard for logged in user with Flutter. We had several problems with Flutter Web, And if you compare it with the current status of the web, the JavaScript frameworks, for instance, React, Vue, and other things, so Flutter Web, it's a bit far from there. So it has its own use case. But what I'm hoping and I'm seeing is that Flutter Web is opening a new window to many developers who never experienced web. Many developers, maybe mobile developers, never touch web application. They don't know inconsistency between browsers. They don't know new APIs. Some of them, they've done something like 8 years ago, and they don't know how web evolved in the last 8 years. And Flutter Web is opening this window for them. For someone who is not very up to date with web version, it's a very great opportunity to build web application. But then imagine if Flutter can be a competitor at some point in the future, next 3 years, with one of these JavaScript frameworks. That would be very fun to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, I want to agree a lot with Majid. What React Native actually failed and React failed with the cross-platform, well, it wasn't like that, but whatever. So from today's perspective, React ecosystem failed to provide a consistent developer experience between mobile and web, right? So there's a React Native web project, but it's not really successful, and you don't see project that is really cross-platform between web and mobile. And Flutter does that. And this is a true innovation when you do have, a single base, one code-based application for several platforms. And that's great. And actually, according to the statistic of Bitrise from 2020, is that already 8% of their builds is with Flutter, compared to the 13% of the builds React Native and rest being native development. So Flutter already has its own niche, and it's growing faster than React Native. Yeah, so I believe this is a success, and I agree with Majid, so that Flutter has the bright future.
Thank you guys. And now it's time to recap. Today we talk about Flutter in general, about development experience, and about the role of the Flutter in industry. And also we covered such topics as Flutter tooling and Dart language, and also native mobile development. So I want to say a big thank you for everybody who joining us tonight. That was really cool to spend this time together talking about one of the best cross-platform framework these days. Hello, Pavel. So long time no see. How are you?
Hello. Yeah, good. I want to thank you. I want to really thank you, all of you, for your that you've been with us for the whole hour. It's more than even an hour, and I want to thank all of you, all our speakers, Eugene, Majid, and Vladimir. Thank you very much for that you've been there and share your ideas. It was very interesting for me to and you answered lots of answers. I collected lots of different insights from this meetup. And on behalf of GDG Minsk, we want to make a small gratitude to our speakers. So we will receive electronic gift cards on your mailbox. So please stay tuned. And the last but not least, we want to remind our audience that you can leave your feedback and improve our process, improve our meetups, and we want to listen to you. So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Majid. Thank you, Eugene and Vladimir, for your insights, for your knowledge, for your sharings. It was really awesome. And thank everyone who was with us during this meetup. So yeah, I will end our meetup right now.
Thanks everybody. Thank you guys. So that.